Olight BALDR Pro R. Is this the best BALDR yet? The BALDR Pro R is a 1350 lumen white light with an integrated green laser, and it has a magnetic rechargeable battery. I like the fact that this laser is not hanging below the light. Olight has previously integrated the laser into their bezel of the BALDR Mini and BALDRS units, so this continues that trend. Now the switches are the same side press switches as the previous full-size Olights, and the mounting system is also that same lever style system, and this fits on most full-size pistols. The BALDR Pro R looks a lot like the PL-PRO, but it does have a longer bezel. And that light laser switching mechanism is actually a slick feeling ring around the bezel. Now, can we count all the BALDRs? Olight's naming scheme continues to puzzle me. There are a bunch of BALDR Olights. One of the first BALDRs that was popular was the Olight PL-PRO BALDR. This is a full-size light with a red laser. Then came the BALDR Pro. This is a full-size light with a green laser, and it is slightly smaller than the previously mentioned PL-PRO BALDR. Then we had the BALDR RL, which is a full-size light with a red laser. Even though it's a full-size light, it apparently doesn't need to include the Pro in the name to indicate full size. So I'm really not sure what Pro means. I see that it is named RL, so I'm hoping that modifier means red laser, right? Then we had the BALDR Mini. This is a compact light with a green laser. Then we had the BALDR RL Mini, which is a compact light with a red laser. And recently we had the BALDRS, which is a compact light, but it's actually bigger than the BALDR Mini, with a green laser. We were excited when we heard that the BALDRS was coming out, thinking that S meant subcompact. Wrong. The S is similar to the Mini, but longer. On the large end we have Pro, which is used inconsistently. That's full size. S being kind of a mid-size, and Mini being small. To this day, I don't actually know what S means. If you know, please comment below. And now that brings us to the BALDR Pro R. This is a full-size light with a green laser. The Pro modifier means apparently that it's a full-size light, but now it's got this letter R following Pro. I don't know. Maybe it means rechargeable. So this naming mess wouldn't be so bad if all the lights were the same shape and size. However, almost every product is dimensionally different in one aspect or another, meaning each one requires a different holster. My advice to anyone who buys an Olight BALDR whatever is to be 100% certain you know which one you have before you buy a holster for it. Since it's all BALDR now, I decided to test a representative sample of all the BALDRs. In addition to the Olight PL-PRO, which is really pretty close in size and form factor to the BALDR Pro R, as well as our benchmark Streamlight TLR-1HL. Now looking through the specs, the BALDR Pro R, at least at today's price, is significantly less expensive than most of the other light laser combos. Also looking at the specs, it appears that that PL-PRO still has the highest spec sheet output, even though it is a little bit older. So for our practical testing, we start off with our creepy guy in the warehouse test. This test visually demonstrates the hotspot, the flood, and the color comparisons fairly well between lights. Now, when looking at the results, the two lights that provide the best definition of our subject are the Streamlight TLR-1HL with its bright, cool light, and the Olight PL-PRO, which is slightly warmer. The hotspot on these two is tighter and really outshines the other four lights. The BALDR Pro R has more flood than the TLR-1HL and does appear warmer, and it does provide fairly good definition, just not as strong. Now, one striking aspect of the BALDR Pro R is that it has two different light colors. It's cool in that center hotspot and then warm in the flood ring surrounding that. This is something we have not seen in a weapon light before. Other than the color differences, This light did perform better than the rest of the light laser combinations we have here from Olight. Next up, we try to punch through vehicle headlights to see this truck's interior. I threw a t-shirt over the passenger seat because I had forgotten my cardboard target, and this t-shirt has some white logos on the arms which I was hoping would come through with the brighter lights. I wasn't disappointed. All the full-size lights showed bits of the white logo on the t-shirt, with the PL-PRO and the TLR-1HL again having the best punch-through. I would say that the two smaller lights, the BALDR Mini and the BALDR-S, did not provide enough light to adequately see the seat backs and the headrests, let alone the details in the shirt. After looking at the truck, I scanned the forest and was pleasantly surprised that all of the lights provided decent visibility. As expected, the two compact lights gave less detail, but it was still adequate. The lights equipped with a green laser projected that laser pretty strong and far. Now on to our lab testing using the integrating sphere. This device allows us to accurately measure the total output of the lights. We made sure all lights were set to high output if available and turned off the lasers. We ran them until the light was well under 10% of its rated output. The BALDR R starts off at over 1600 lumens, but within 2 minutes falls to about 560 lumens where it sits for the rest of the first 30 minutes. And then it steps down to about 330 lumens for the rest of that hour. This is pretty respectable and significantly better than the other 3 BALDRs tested, but it is still not as strong and as long-lasting as the TLR-1HL or the PL-PRO. At this point, I'd say if you're looking for a high-output, rechargeable light and you don't need the laser, you should probably still be looking at the PL-PRO. Now, I do want to mention that the BALDR-S, for being a compact light, does perform fairly well, giving 300 lumens for over 30 minutes. Now, using the data gathered from the integrating sphere, we can also calculate max lumens. Now, the ANSI Plato specs require that we average the readings taken between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. Doing so gives us the following data as compared to the manufacturer specs. Now, the first striking thing is that none of the Olights meet their manufacturer spec. The closest was the BALDR-S, which was at 99% of the rating. The BALDR Pro R came in at 1080 max lumens, which is 80% of its rating. It's also sad that the PL-PRO, which claims 1500 lumens, had the exact same rating as the TLR-1HL, which is 1164 lumens. Finally, I'm not sure what's wrong with the BALDR Pro in this test. We do know about high and low settings, and this light was set on high. It still performed poorly. It may be a defective unit, which I have seen a couple of these in the shop, but if so, that's Olight's issue. I'm just going to publish the results that we measure. We know how important Candela is for punching through photonic barriers and for controlling threats. We brought our testing closer in line with the ANSI Plato specs and ran these lights for 30 seconds before we measured max Candela. As we already saw in the practical tests, the smaller BALDR lights provide less of a hotspot and more flood, and that shows with their rather low Candela measurements here. The BALDR Pro R is the strongest light with a laser, but it still doesn't quite have the Candela of the TLR-1HL or the PL-PRO, which led this test. Now let's talk about holsters. I'm writing this review on the eve of the product launch, so I do not expect much in the way of holster availability. You need a holster specifically built for the BALDR Pro R. Holsters for the PL-PRO will not work. The bezel on the BALDR Pro R is longer, meaning it will bottom out before the pistol is fully holstered. Now, Works is developing holsters, which should be available shortly. See links in the description for any current availability. The BALDR Pro R shot well. I think the buttons lend themselves to constant activation more than momentary, as it's hard to keep the light activated under recoil. The bezel ring is a slick way to change between light and laser. The light is strong, and the color shift from hotspot to flood is not distracting. Now, I shot all these units that we tested, and I only had a problem with the BALDR Pro. The BALDR Pro battery door opened up on me. and the light and laser both turned off. Now this is why I prefer battery doors that are either locked in place or not. On further investigation, it appears that this door, even when locked closed, can be opened with a light to moderate pressure, and apparently the recoil did that. The sealed battery system of the BALDR Pro R is much better in this regard, as you don't ever have to remove it and risk having the battery door open. As a side note, we've not really tested the lasers at all, and that's because we haven't developed our laser testing here yet. Now I like the BALDR Pro R. It's a slick looking form factor with good output. If you're running a full-size pistol and you want a rechargeable light with a laser, this may be the weapon light for you. If you want many of those same features in a smaller form factor, then the BALDRS did perform fairly well. I know a lot of people find the rechargeability convenient, especially when running a holster that allows for holstered charging, such as those from Works. Now some of you may only be watching this review to see if one of these Olights blew up or caught fire. Fortunately, we had no such drama. I do have a few items that I would like to see improved on the BALDR Pro R. First, I find those switches uninspiring. Rotary switches such as the TLR-1HL, the X300U, or the PL-350 are better. And even the press-down switches of the TLR-7A are pretty good. The Olight press inward switches on the full-size lights are not my favorite because they don't lend to momentary use. Pressing inward is less intuitive than pressing down, and it often disrupts the sights more than a downward pressure. Finally, every single one of these Olights did not meet their output claims, including the BALDR Pro R. Now I'm hoping that Olight comes out with this subcompact light with a laser soon, something designed to fit the P365 and the G43X MOS. Now what the heck would they name it? Let me know in the comments below.